This is a kind of madness because we are all endangered by the events of recent days. The Ukrainian, but almost surely Western intelligence uh, agency attack on strategic bombers deep inside Russia is a provocation of extraordinary proportions for many, many reasons. Uh, and yet, it, as you say, is being discussed as if it's a victory in a video game, just another clever notch rather than a profound destabilization, uh, further uh, profound destabilization of the nuclear arms framework. Part of the problem that we should just mention at the beginning is that the Russian bombers, according to many uh, authoritative accounts, were in open view of satellite monitoring precisely because of nuclear arms control agreements that left the strategic forces to monitoring by the other side of the agreement, and therefore left them exposed. Now Ukraine has come along using Western intelligence for this attack. Of course, we're not told at all, and we never will be told, the role of the CIA and MI6 in this attack, but there is a very good reason to believe that these organizations either led this attack or were deeply involved in it. Uh, but in any event, the intelligence from the U.S. Was used for this attack, and there's only gloating about the fact that this has occurred, even though it undermines a critical component of nuclear arms control between the two nuclear superpowers. The frivolousness, the foolishness, the recklessness of Western behavior and of the Western media are shocking. Absolutely shocking, and they show no understanding and insight whatsoever into our global dangers. Now, you raise the question, why is this so? And of course, it's a puzzle. That's what we're trying to understand. Where did even the sense of self-preservation go? Because we are getting closer and closer to nuclear war through this kind of recklessness. And whenever that risk is raised, we're told, don't worry about it. It's a bluff. It's nothing to worry about, which itself is a form of reckless idiocy, because, of course, we are facing real risks, and no politician should be so obtuse as to not understand that. So where does all of this come from? I think probably at the core is the profound arrogance of the US government and of its allied intelligence agencies after the end of the Soviet Union. I think, in one sense, all that we are experiencing of the last 34 years since the 1991 demise of the Soviet Union reflects a shocking arrogance of the United States security state and of the CIA, which since that moment has felt that it could act with impunity, that it could act unilaterally, that it could abandon all treaty frameworks and all agreements. And that arrogance, of course, arose with the U.S. idea that it was now the unchallenged global hegemon, and now it could do as it pleased, whether launching wars, overthrowing states, engaging in coups and assassinations, or abandoning the nuclear arms framework. Uh, this week's attack was a kind of abandonment of the nuclear arms framework, but there have been many since the end of the Soviet Union. The United States has essentially abandoned one treaty commitment after another, starting in 2002 with the unilateral abandonment by the U.S. of the anti-ballistic missile treaty, including 2019, the abandonment of the Intermediate Nuclear Force Treaty. Of course, in the current phase of the U.S.-Russia conflict in Ukraine, the effective end of the New START agreement. We don't have a nuclear arms control framework because the United States has walked out of it unilaterally, and actions this week further amplify the fact to Russia that they are under a strategic attack by the United States. It's extraordinarily dangerous and reckless, but all compounded by the fact that the risks are not even recognized. They're not even acknowledged. They're not even mentioned. Our mainstream media are so obtuse and ignorant, or so willfully under the thumb of the CIA, that we get no uh, inkling of any implications of what's happened this week.
It doesn't happen in a vacuum either. I mean, the overall path of the world now, not only are we now backing and aiding at least many of the European countries and the United States genocide in Gaza, but also these threats of war with Iran, which could be a world war on its own, talking about war with China, which could also end the war, the world, and now yeah, attacking the nuclear forces of Russia, something that would be a nightmare situation during the Cold War. And it's just, as you said, it's brushed off. And indeed, it's presented as, if you're pro-Ukraine, then you have to clap like a seal. And if you're critical of it, then you're somehow pro-Russian. This is kind of the new intellectual level we have. And it's not just the media, it's the politicians. They seem like fanatics. This I don't understand where again where's the opposition? Why are there no peace movements? Indeed, the peace movement seems to be arguing that peace depends on defeating Russia. It's I can't really make sense of this. I don't know how did we become the fanatics here?
The only thing I can say about this in trying to understand is that these relentless warmongers like Starmer, like uh, Emmanuel Macron, like Merz, uh, are unpopular in their own countries. So we could say that part of this approach is maintained by the progressive collapse of the ethos of democracy, in that what is happening does not reflect public opinion by and large. And that is despite the fact that the public is inundated with propaganda in favor of this ongoing war. It's not true that the mainstream public in Europe or the United States wants this war. So not only are the politicians and this corporate media uh, on a relentless course of war, uh, but despite all of the propaganda, they don't have the public rooting for war. Now, what is true is there is no organized opposition to this that has any effect whatsoever. The politicians rate in sometimes the the teens, or in the 20s in percent approval ratings. Uh, Yet they still somehow carry out their functions. Their governments don't fall. Opposition politicians rarely take office, partly because the ones that would be in opposition are blocked from power still, either by being disqualified in actual elections, as happened in Romania, uh, and perhaps is happening in France right now, or by a coalition of parties, the historic governing parties, uh, getting together to somehow try to cobble very fragile uh, coalitions to block the voices that oppose the war. So I think it just adds another measure of complexity to your question, which is why are our political institutions so utterly ineffective in bringing some kind of control over this situation, despite the clear unpopularity of this. Now, it's true, people are not by and large out in the streets. Uh, that raises other questions, though that's not a very effective form of control over foreign policy. We basically have lost the control of our political institutions over foreign policy. I think foreign policy has been guided in the United States for decades by the proverbial deep state, which means the unaccountable uh, institutions that operate in secrecy and operate by lies. The CIA, first and foremost among them, but not the only one. So the benumbing of our politics, the unaccountability of our foreign policy is part of this story. Again, it is born in the arrogance that took over American foreign policy, and apparently, and to my surprise, that of the U.S. vassal states in Europe to an incredible extent after 1991. But there is a kind of benumbing of this effect, a deep cynicism and skepticism throughout the West that our institutions are actually working. Our governments are unpopular and justly so, but it doesn't lead to self-reflection or self-correction to this point. Trump is a puzzling and I could say interesting figure in this. Of course, he's so unstable in his behavior, in his demeanor, in his messaging that we can't make heads or tails of Trump. Uh, but you get the glimmers of an idea that he would like the war in Ukraine to stop, but he seems incompetent or unable to do so, maybe simply not in control. Uh, when you take an event as just occurred, where Ukraine has taken an action that is profoundly dangerous and destabilizing, there's not a word from the White House, not an expression of concern. There is the inside question, who knew what, when? Again, I think it's the overwhelming uh, view of experts that, of course, this was a CIA planned and executed operation, not carried out by 18 months stealthily by a country 100% dependent on U.S. intelligence. There are reports that the U.S. Secretary of Defense watched all of this in real time. Uh, Whether that's true or not, again, we don't know, and we're not going to know because the government lies and there will be no definitive proof of this. But all of that would run against the public narrative of Trump trying to bring parties to the negotiating table. And then when an event like this occurs, we have no explanation, no comment, uh, not even a question mark raised by these fools at the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post, as if that's even a question to be asked. So, does Trump play a role in foreign policy? Not clear. But this just adds to the mystery.